this week on the Eldritch Lorecast?
For Draw Steel, and while I'm looking, find Shawn Moen's name in there, and you said nothing to me.
I hope you enjoyed it.
You asked me what the big story is, and I was like, it's Daggerheart.
Nearly 72,000 attendees in the 2025 Gen Con.
I think all 72,000 people were between me and the Ghostfire booth.
This is the hard-hitting journalism you wanted when you had to come on the
Somewhere
show.
there is a secret place with good lighting and air conditioning, and
And
not
I
too
will
much
never
sound.
tell you where that is.
Can you imagine if there was a panel of third-party publishers that Wizards could have reached out to when they decided to mess around with the open gaming license?
All that and more right now.
That was great. The two tones in energy. Yeah, it was
You gotta mix
perfect.
it up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Eldritch Lorecast, the #1 tabletop RPG podcast in all the realms. My name is Ben Byrne. This is 202 episodes of this podcast, and I am joined, as always, by Shawn Merwin, Dael Kingsmill, and joining us this week in James Hake's seat is Todd Kenreck. Welcome to the Eldritch Lorecast, Todd.
Hello. I'm taking over for James. Actually, James is not allowed to come back. So,
Yeah.
surprise.
It's a
Yeah.
dog-eat-dog world.
It's a difficult way to break it to them.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Well, I mean, you shouldn't have taken the day off. So,
exactly.
that's just how it goes.
Exactly. You are free roaming now.
Yeah, I would have not exposed myself at that moment, like by not showing up to work. Yeah, sorry, James Hake.
How was Gen Con for you, Todd? You have just returned, as has Shawn, from that fabled place.
It's always crazy because the entire population of Indianapolis increases by 10%, and your pocketbook will be reduced by 50%. But it was a really good time. It is amazing how expensive things suddenly become. Like $100 hotels become $500 hotels. So I made sure I had a residence in where I could actually buy all my groceries somewhat out of town, brought them into the hotel room, and just like microwave pizza bagels the whole time. But Gen Con it's always really nice. Last time I was there, I didn't really get to focus on the con itself because I was actually producing the Gen Con live show, the D&D live show. I did all three of those Baldur's Gate shows. I had different kinds of anxiety this time, so I didn't have like this crushing weight of this massively produced live play on my mind. But I also I felt really guilty the first day because I didn't feel like I got enough done. Then I felt the same way the second day, and the third day was just nonstop. I was just a sweaty mess. I was just running from Lucas Oil and back, and I found some perfect locations for interviewing relative to Gen Con. Some secret spots.
You've got to share those because that's the trick, isn't it? Is like finding somewhere.
But then there won't be secret spots, Ben.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold that one close because I found this weird spot where the lighting was good and the air conditioning was just banging.
That's what's really important at Gen Con, the air conditioning.
And the music wasn't too much. These things I care about. But like everyone was really sweet. A woman made me cry.
In a good way?
Yeah, it's complex.
Okay.
Gen Con's hard to go to once you've just been laid off. I'm gonna be honest. Where like not everyone plays D&D, but like a significantly more amount of people than Fred Meyer near my house, right? Like knew who I was, and so there was a lot of conversation.
Different experience, obviously getting around a bit more, seeing people getting to interact with people kind of outside the Wizards of the Coast wheelhouse necessarily. Was that a different experience for you?
Yeah, and I wanted to do, sadly, more of it. It's just, I didn't know I was even going to Gen Con, so scheduling things turned out to be kind of a nightmare because people maybe will stay out too late, and then your appointment and your interview time will have to shift and all kinds. You have to kind of, how do I put this nicely? You have to be aware that people may be up very late and been unkind to themselves.
There's time, and then there's Gen Con time.
But yeah, I did get to cover more things. Something that occurred to me, and James Hake actually helped kind of codify this in my head. We were having a drink, and he asked me what the big story is, and I was like, it's Daggerheart. And that's why I just decided to focus on mostly. However, I want to start getting interviews with like Pathfinder. I want to cover Draw Steel, everything that Brandon Sanderson is doing. I do want to do that stuff. It's just I am one physical body. Eventually you become quite tired.
You bring up Cosmere because that's the one that, to me, for as big as that Kickstarter was, and this could just be like self-experience bias is a term for it. I can't think of what it is, but that's the one that seems to be doing like much quieter and yet very successful, compared to something like Daggerheart or even Draw Steel. But that might, again, just be the circles that I swim in a bit more.
It's always hard for me to gauge because I can gauge things by view count, and I watch other videos and how well they're doing. Doesn't mean that's how well that product is doing. You can be extremely niche and no one will want to watch a video about it, right? So yeah, certainly wasn't something that was being talked about a ton in my circles, but my circles are largely D&D. And so that focus is, and I've known like the Critical Role cast, and I've known Matt for years. So I have that closer association to all things Daggerheart. Yeah, it's hard for me, I guess. I can tell Daggerheart videos do consistently very well across multiple creators. And so I don't know if that's a measurement of success. That's to be determined. The vibe while I was there felt very Daggerheart focused. Everyone wanted to talk about that. And I was even at an event weeks before, and it was the same thing.
I mean, thank you for saying Daggerheart multiple times, because now we can put it in our thumbnail of this episode.
It was not intentional.
Hooked them in. Shawn, did you see anything around Cosmere? Were they running like organized plays or anything that you saw? Or maybe not even an organized play, but just open tables?
Yeah, I really didn't see. I really didn't hear anything. The only reason even that Daggerheart came up for me was our booth was kitty corner to theirs.
Ooh.
So I got a chance to wave at folks as they walked by. But most of my time was in the stadium, which was where the D&D was being played. So I was out there running games, having meetings, and then in between I would come across folks, but didn't really sit down with anyone other than more D&D centric folks, just because that's what I'm working on right now. So,
and Lucas Oil Stadium has the best hot dogs. Don't eat hot dogs in the actual convention center itself.
I find at Gen Con, one of the real difficulties is food.
Yeah,
because it's like...
I don't think I ate very much.
Yeah, stock up. Yeah. Food is not easily accessible, and it's not usually super great for you.
We're picking up a lot of tips here. You get your groceries out of town ahead of time.
Yeah.
You get your hot dogs at the stadium.
This is the hard-hitting journalism you wanted when you had to come on the show.
Somewhere there is a secret place with good lighting and air conditioning and not
And I
too
will
much
never
sound.
tell you where that is.
Yeah, I feel like I need to go to Gen Con next year with like a detective hat and a raincoat and just like follow you around at a safe distance and find out where these secret places
That
are.
won't be creepy at all. But yeah, everyone was very sweet. Actually, the big thing is everyone was very kind and sweet to me. It's hard to be kind of faced with that, though. If someone says something nice to you every 10 feet, that becomes a lot.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's always when people are nice to me, that's when I start crying.
I went to the Darrington Press event, and I was aware of what they were announcing. And all those things happened, and it was really fun. And I'm just like trying to get to the press room, and I'm leaving, and someone literally dressed like Heath in cosplay stopped me and said some very intense things about people who, how do I put this? They said some very nice things in a very direct way in what was essentially a soliloquy or monologue. By the end of it, I could not speak. I was crying. And I can't actually physically speak when I'm crying. I destroyed my wedding vows because I was overcome with emotion, and just my vocal cords locked up. And then I told her that she had committed emotional terrorism. But she was so kind, and it was like very unexpected. And so that was great. And then I hid. But Gen Con's lovely. It's full of so many lovely people and so many other games also. Like you can kind of get lost in the crowds. It's not like Gary Con.
Were you able to take time just to go and like check out, even if you didn't necessarily have like a meeting or a recording or anything like that, go and just see what's up, so to speak?
Yeah, like I snuck into the D&D booth and I recorded footage of people using the starter kit there. I wandered the halls around. I also always make sure I buy my wife Megan something before I go back. This time not dice, because we have too many dice. I'm probably going to start selling my dice because things have gone out of control. I didn't get to play a lot of games. I actually wanted to play Daggerheart while I was there, and I just kept on making appointments, and I kept on doing interviews because, there's a price tag to Gen Con, and I just felt like I had to keep on going. And you always overestimate the amount of time or underestimate the amount of time things will take. I got pretty lucky with the camera gear and the microphones I had, but it's a hustle. It's to get things covered. I really wish I could have seen more.
As someone who runs a YouTube channel as part of a company, having that support is definitely, it has its benefits. Being out there all on your own, kind of running the whole show now, I can imagine is a whole new, hopefully exciting challenge.
The secret is it's never not been like this. So
right, okay.
I own my own camera gear. I just needed to upgrade my audio gear, but I never stopped shooting my own stuff at Wizards of the Coast. I never used their cameras. I have always used my own lenses, my own cameras. I started using their microphones because my stuff got a little bit old, but like the only time I had a shooter for anything was like once for a series of interviews with the Baldur's Gate 3 cast, and that was it. Like it's just been me holding lights, holding microphones. I've got all of my kit super well designed, so it fits into a single backpack or roller bag, really light tripods. So that stuff I'm used to. I used to do E3 like that. I did 45 interviews my first time I went to PAX Prime, or PAX West, I should say. Sorry.
Todd, this is so much work.
Yes, but then you're not paying someone else.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I did have a wonderful editor because I had flown down to Burbank, talked to Critical Role, and I did reach out to an old editor of mine because there's no way I was going to get that finished. Even uploading 4K files was a nightmare. So they helped me with the edit of the very first video we dropped. And I knew we need that support because it's breaking news. So, But no, I'm weirdly used to it. I don't recommend it. I would love to make enough money to like have a camera crew, but there's a misperception even when you're at a big company, you're not necessarily getting that kind of support. Though there is like a lovely team of individuals who will shoot stuff for you at Wizards of the Coast. There is a camera team there, and they are wonderful people, bent over backwards to make things work for me sometimes in terms of like getting studio space and all kinds of other stuff. I miss them. I'm just really nitpicky about lenses. I'm just a weirdo.
Well, that's a mark of a good tech person, I think. I mean, Dante, who's our digital specialist, he produces the Lorecast, but also shoots everything when we're on location. I'm just like, am I in frame? Good.
If I was smarter, I would have more help.
Well, folks can check out your YouTube channel. It's just at Todd Kenreck, is where folks can go and check it out. See the videos that you've been uploading pretty ceaselessly since Gen Con.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a wise strategy. I have been publishing a video almost every single day, and then I'm also cutting YouTube shorts and TikTok videos and Instagram videos, all from that content as well. Because that's the video strategy I implemented last year at D&D, so I'm sticking to it.
Well, that raises an excellent question. And I'm not like, this might get too inside baseball for a couple of folks like on the YouTube side of things, but You've just said YouTube and strategy in the same sentence, and that's piqued my interest.
Okay.
And Shawn is about to just log off. Because like, you just talked about how you were in charge of shooting everything yourself when you were at Wizards, et cetera, et cetera. Were you semi in charge of the YouTube strategy in terms of like what was getting uploaded, when it was getting uploaded, how often, what was getting turned into shorts?
Absolutely. I was the senior video strategist. So yeah, I was in charge of just video content in general. So if it was going up on social media, I was in charge of that video. Ultimately, that was the deal. We tried to keep live play shows on TikTok because TikTok just functions better with comedic content. But I always wanted to make sure we were telling people, like trying to find the best moments from interviews that still worked for social media and Instagram. Like I'm teasing the devs constantly with dad jokes, trying to make it. So increasingly the interviews got weirder or funnier to also fill both roles. And we had a great year. All those numbers are public facing. This year, the YouTube channel actually jumped past Magic the Gathering's subscribers. So that's a hard thing for D&D to do. Yeah, that happened a couple of months ago. I was pretty proud. And we saw like 100% growth every single year for 3 years on that channel for YouTube. Right. And that's largely because, the Baldur's Gate 3 shows I produced did really well. And that really helped social media in general, those clips from those shows. And I increasingly wrote them summaries for those stories that would make them pure chaos. So we had an adventure where Asterion is faced with all of the party becoming vampires, and he has to be the reasonable one. So I always kept on writing things like we had 2 characters actually be dragons, and just making it crazier and crazier and crazier. And so those views are public. So I think like Gen Con got 22 million between YouTube and YouTube Shorts. MCM London got around 18 million, and this is like a couple of months ago. I don't know what the new numbers are. And then it was like another 22 million for Magic Con. And then for video all up, if you count every Instagram video that's public and TikTok and X and all that stuff, it all came to 150 million.
That's pretty big numbers.
The long rant, but I was in charge of the video strategy.
Okay. So has the strategy changed now that you're solo? Is there a new way of looking at it, or is it much kind of the same?
I had a very kind of bare bones strategy just because that's what I had available. So it's great when you have a special feature like Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins and a lovely D&D design team to interview, because people love hearing from them, and you can make funny videos. And I started making funny videos about Modrons and why do they have lips and stuff like that. I started, messing around with other types of content when I had time, but we had 3 major books come out. We had the Player's Handbook, we had the Monster Manual, we had the Dungeon Master's Guide, and that required a lot of editing time and a ton of shooting time. And it was just nonstop. Once we started doing the Player's Handbook, we made like an 8-hour documentary on those 3 books, basically, or longer. Maybe it's 18 hours. But I also did the first YouTube premiere strategy, which I couldn't believe worked. We did a YouTube premiere every single day about each class. Well, so we started an everything video where it's the big overview, and then we just did every single class each day. So this is Rogue Day at 9. This is Wizard Day, Warlock Day. And the number of concurrent viewers went up every single time until we got to like the Bard and the Cleric. But it just created like kind of appointment viewing.
People ask me for YouTube advice, and I always feel really bad giving it because like I learned from people like Dael or Matthew Perkins, who runs a YouTube channel or whatever. And the fact of the matter is, which is what I tell people, we're all just reading the tea leaves. You know what I mean? Like you're all just like trying stuff and seeing what happens. And then you draw like a conclusion from a hypothesis that then gets disproven. Like the next time you try that hypothesis, I think thumbnails with this sort of text in them maybe work for our channel. Oh, but why didn't it work here? And yet now this thing, blah,
and you
blah,
got to
blah.
work with a small sample size because you can't just keep making experimental videos all the time.
I did something about how much I liked playing a wild magic sorcerer, and no one watched that video.
Right.
But you have to try.
Very often, videos that you think are absolutely going to kill it, you're like, people will love this.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. And then videos that you make in a rush because you're just like, I need something to go up, suddenly do really well.
That's no joke how I started making D&D videos, Ben.
I believe it.
That's how I got here.
I believe it.
2 people who are absolute geniuses, Mikey over at Legends of Evantris, we actually get into it, and I'll have a further video about. I also want to start showing how content creators are a lot more than what you're seeing on video, because people like Ginny D, she is an absolute genius and a wealth of information. She is obsessed with analytics like I am. I mean, the first time I met Ginny D, her and I were shooting the Lego live play show I did there, and we're both glued to YouTube Studio Analytics on our phones. And I'm pretty sure like my emotional value as a person is determined by my ranking on the last video that I published, which isn't that healthy, but like they're often super analytical people who love numbers. And I am not a math person, but there's a very old show called Max Headroom, which I loved. And the fact that my life has essentially become Max Headroom because they're watching the number of viewers constantly on that sci-fi show is pretty remarkable. But that's something I want to get into more, is like these people are experts. They're watching the trends day to day. They may know more about the tabletop game industry than the people who are making the games, just because they are seeing that happen live.
Well, speaking of which, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to jump a little bit through the run sheet here to an email that we got sent to. Dael, what's the email address?
The email address is podcast@ghostfiregaming.com.
Oh, you weren't paying attention.
I wasn't. I was reading chat.
Will's email to podcast@ghostfiregaming.com was about the D&D advisory group that Dan Ayub mentioned in a blog post and then pontificated upon at the live event that Wizards had at Gen Con, suggesting that it could look similar to the Commander format panel, which Magic the Gathering has, which I went and had a glance at. We talked about this, I think, a little while ago when this happened, but Wizards of the Coast took responsibility for shepherding the Commander format of Magic the Gathering, which really came out of the community. And there was like community panels and advisory groups, and I'm not a Magic the Gathering guy, so forgive me, Magic people. But my understanding was there was like a group who would, create restrict and ban lists and things to make sure that Commander remained fair and tournamentable. WotC took control of that group for reasons, but now have a panel of 17 people going and taking a glance at that panel, appearing to consist of folks from the Magic the Gathering community who are tournament judges, tournament organizers or event organizers, online creators, players. Some of them just kind of seem to be like tournament winners, possibly, and including at least one Wizards of the Coast staff member, Scott Larrabee. So the suggestion that the advisory panel for D&D could look kind of similar, and it got me thinking, because I don't think we talked about this last week when we first brought this up. Like, who would you like to see on that panel?
Oh, me.
I was going to jokingly, I didn't realize that's what the real question was going to be. I was going to be like jokingly, Who are the 17?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to name all 17, but like, is there someone in particular?
We do. We need 17. I'm sorry. We're going to need 17 of them. Yeah.
The rest of the episode will be.
I think it's an interesting question because I think it should be like people who used to write for D&D that have insights into like the history of D&D. And that's something that's super important, especially when you're not having Chris and Jeremy around there. I would actually put myself up there for reasons because I'm obsessed about the numbers and the trends when it's come to D&D. But like, yeah, I would tap people like Ginny D. I would tap people who write professionally and make a living off the existence of Dungeons and Dragons. I would try to make it extremely varied. I would even try to get a few people who are not part of the industry. I just don't know who the 17. 17's a lot. 17 might be all of us YouTubers.
I mean, I would.
It's a small industry.
Yeah,
I mean this quite genuinely in terms of like thinking about like what different people bring to it, and I think I would definitely recommend Shawn Merwin or someone like Shawn Merwin, particularly bringing that like keeping new players and getting new players on board and involved. You know what I mean? Is the thing that I think Shawn is known for excelling at.
The problem is Shawn Merwin's an idiot, so we have to start there. I fear a panel like this, because there needs to be so much input about so many different topics. I almost wish there would be 7 panels about very specific things that Wizards of the Coast needs information on. Can you imagine if there was a panel of third-party publishers that Wizards could have reached out to when they decided to mess around with the open gaming license? If they had such a panel, that panel could have said, you know, it would be a bad idea to do this and charge money for this. How about we do something like you create a marketplace and you advertise for us, and then we can provide you content that you can then benefit from as well? That might be a great idea. Having other people on that board would have messed up that conversation. People that weren't in publishing, people that didn't understand what the third-party publishers were going through. I love the idea of getting feedback. I just want to make sure that feedback is coming from the people that are going to give you the information you need, rather than people that have no idea, but they have a bee in their bonnet about something and they want to get their information in when it has no relevance to that particular field. I'd rather have 17 panels with 3 people per panel than a panel of 17 trying to lead so many different discussions where they might not have any actual solid information on it.
What's 3 times 17?
That is 51, Dael.
You were so fast.
Now we need to name 51 people.
That frightened me.
So now you need to name 51.
Yeah.
Right now.
Here we go.
Shawn, give us 51 people right now. Actually, on the subject of Shawn Merwin's ubiquitousness, this is off topic, but I would just like to throw in there that I'm here talking last week about, the Start Here adventure Delian Tomb for Draw Steel. And then I opened it again the other day to find out Geordie's real name. Geordie, one of the designers over at MCDM.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember his real first name. It's Robert. And while I'm looking, find Shawn Merwin's name in there. And you said nothing to me here on this podcast.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the adventure.
We had a couple people comment both on YouTube and on Spotify. Yes, you can comment on Spotify. Just pull over your car, take your hands out of the dishwasher, and then write a comment. I don't know why your hands would be in the dishwasher. Anyway, it's an in-joke. Yeah, we had a couple people, and I'm inferring tone here, but the tone being like, can't believe they didn't have Shawn talk about like Delian. It would have been nice to hear from Shawn talk about Delian Tomb. And I was like, I didn't know Shawn worked on Delian Tomb.
He didn't
I was
tell
working
us.
on Delian Tomb.
It was fun working on the Delian Tomb. It's great working with James Introcaso. It's great working with all the people that worked on the adventure. Scott Fitzgerald Gray as the editor. I love D&D. I love all sorts of role-playing games, including Draw Steel, and I hope people enjoy the adventure. It doesn't matter that I worked on it. What matters is that people use it to get into the game and learn to love that game.
It matters on a TTRPG news podcast.
Yeah,
where we want to get the skinny. We want to get the scoop.
Well, speaking of skinny and scoop, the attendance of Gen Con this year was not skinny. It was a large scoop of people. Nearly 72,000 attendees in the 2025 Gen Con, which is up on the just over 71,000 from last year. 575 exhibitors in 2025. up on the 540 exhibitors in 2024. And part of the reason this is news is because it does somewhat defy the tariff anxieties that was circulating in the RPG and board game and, tabletop in general industry before the convention. Some exhibitors struggling to get stock into the country because of the tariffs in time for the convention, and that added time pressure that, the date that the convention starts is kind of a hard due-by date to be able to get things moving. So all in all, very successful. Take this as anecdotal, to be completely honest, but from what I have heard, a little 50-50 in terms of a lot of vendors saying, best convention ever, sold out of stock, this was incredible, so glad we came. And others saying, solid convention, lots of people there, like it was really great, we sold a lot, but gods was it stressful getting to it, getting stock here, and some folks not being able to get their stock into the country in time for the convention. So kind of good news, but let's not let the good news paper over the hard work that kind of went into the effort that made the good news happen.
I think all 72,000 people were between me and the Ghostfire booth on Thursday morning. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I'd heard you said last week that the show floor was kind of pretty blocked up, like in ways that it hadn't necessarily been in previous years.
Yeah, there was gridlock. It was the worst Thursday morning for me. It sort of started to filter through later, but if you go to Gen Con, just be aware of that, right? If you have a fear of crowds, might not be the con for you, because you are standing in a grid of stalls and exhibits and so on. And sometimes you're just not moving because there is a massive humanity, and everyone moving in a different direction means no one moving. Great show, must for a gamer, but just be aware of that.
Good news for you for future years. Indianapolis expanding the capacity of the city to have conventions with an in-construction Signia hotel, which apparently the owners of Gen Con got a hard hat walkthrough of the in-construction hotel to just kind of show them what it's about, what the opportunities are for following years. So Gen Con, when will it be enough, in the words of Walter White's wife? Speaking of sparkly rocks that maybe have a blue tinge to them, those sparkly rocks known as Aether crystals are getting blasted to pieces in the ethereal expanse, which is creating portals, which is causing Aether, this like slightly poisonous, magical sea-like substance, to pour into other realms, threatening the very nature of existence throughout the multiverse. What am I talking about, you might ask? Shawn Merwin's gonna tell ya.
We are working on an adventure called The Ethereal Expanse, Dreams of the Drowned God. It is being led by none other than Will Doyle, whose name, if you don't read the credits to learn who writes your adventures, wrote Rime of the Frostmaiden, worked on Tomb of Annihilation, and really is the brains behind Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Who else is writing this, you might ask? Well, none other than James Hake, Aaron Roberts, a great creator who's worked on other Ghostfire products, and Andy Collins, a name from the past and the present, who was in charge of D&D way back when, in the 3rd and 4th edition days. He is making his triumphant return, I guess, to role-playing games by working on this product with us.
Very exciting. Kickstarter launching next week, which we're now announcing the launch date, August 19th, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Is when it's going live. I am neglecting my copy link duties. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can click up there. I think it'll be over there, probably above Shawn. Or you can click down in the comments to follow the Kickstarter and learn when to set sail. We've also been uploading videos to the YouTube channel, like featuring some of the pirate subclasses from the Ethereal Expanse setting guide, which has been a lot of fun to re-explore that, and the sailing mechanics, which are in the Ethereal Expanse setting guide. They won't be core to Dreams of the Drowned God. It'll sort of be like an optional. You can run these more abstractly and run them sort of more in a narrative Daggerhardy sense, or you can run them using the like over 30 or 40 pages of sailing rules that are in the Ethereal Expanse setting guide if you want to get that as an add-on at Kickstarter. That it is meaty. I've been reviewing it recently and it is very cool. Anyway, go check that out. Speaking of checking things out, you can check out this email that I'm going to read you that came into podcast@ghostfiregaming.com from Reed Halloran asking about cozy homes. Speaking of pirate ships and having a home base to come back to. There we go. There's the segue. Reed Halloran asking how to create a cozy home base that the players will want to come back to, that they will quickly become attached to, and do these safe spaces for the party help create connection to the campaign and the world and the story. What do we think, folks?
I love them just because, like, I like the concept of the bastion system, but like ultimately, I think there's nothing better than a group eventually having a hideout or a Millennium Falcon or a ship they care about, and then the worst thing I ever did is I had them, they kept on upgrading their ship over time. And so they got bigger guns. I had a Flying Citadel for D&D, and that was a 3-year campaign. But then I'd wreck it, every couple of months, and they'd have to build it up again. But that sense of home and comfort, it's more visceral when the villains show up to that place that, you call home, that you have this emotional attachment to, and it's your world. It's the players getting to be a dungeon master, for a couple of minutes every day. And they'll daydream about it. I do it. I mean, I'll daydream about my flying castle and what kind of ballistas I will have on it. So I think it's one of the best things you can ever do for your players, honestly. And it's really training wheels to being a dungeon master.
Yeah, I also think it's a great in for players to hook themselves into the world and into the role playing, like really get into it by just asking them, hey, what does your room look like? You know what I mean? Or saying, hey, you're a druid. What's something you would like to be at your home base? And, that's going to look drastically different if they are at, Castle Grayskull versus if they are on a pirate ship. What's a druid going to do on a pirate ship? Maybe they have their little, bucket of herbs on the windowsill, that sort of thing. And I think it just really gives a very simple opportunity for people to contribute to the world in a way that gets them invested. And just like Todd, I am such a big believer in later coming and threatening it.
Okay, that's interesting because that's what I wasn't sure about. Shawn, you go ahead, but then we'll jump into that topic.
No, I think all of what's been said is true. There can be a sense of overdoing it with that threat, only because sometimes threatening the home becomes the most important part of the DM's job rather than moving a story forward. So you have to be wary of the direction that the players want to go. If you become too diabolical with, I'm going to get your home, the players are always playing defense, and not all players love that. Some players want their characters out there in the world doing things, and if they need to always turn around and look over their shoulder at what's happening to our home, it turns off some players. Not all players, but it's just a little bit something to be aware of, but not so much that you shouldn't give the opportunity for players to build those things up. It's similar to threatening the NPCs that the players love, right? You can do it, and it can be very powerful, but you just don't want to overdo it.
It's a solid episode of like television, right? Like you don't want it happening all the time, but it's a great hook for a couple of sessions of any game because you did wait till you made it personal. Yeah, and if you do it even once, the entire campaign, it has incredible dramatic effect, and they will hate that final villain. Ooh. I recommend, I always like having 3 villains during a campaign. They increase in tier as time goes on, and then the last villain does the worst thing to instantly make them hate. But yeah, like to Shawn's point, if you're doing that all the time, then I'd probably just burn the house down.
You burn our cozy place, I burn your cozy place.
Yeah. I don't want to be at home steep every day. That's really stressful.
I do think it's interesting, though, this idea of, targeting the NPCs, because I was going to say, I think in a way, targeting the home base gives you a lot of the same impact as targeting beloved NPCs without having to kill off beloved NPCs, and kind of can act as a stand-in for that emotional weight, which I think can be valuable. I think it's worth mentioning, the specific question says, is it good advice to endanger these places?
That's my question.
Oh, that's your question.
Because the way that the email kind of positioned it was kind of like statements. And I wanted to trouble it a little bit. I wanted to be like, should the assumptions the email is making be challenged? So I just wanted to clarify that, but go on.
Very good, very good. And you're right to challenge it. Because I do think it is probably one of those times that, we talk about a session 0 and figuring out what sort of things your players are comfortable with. often it becomes a thing that you did before the campaign and then you just go on without it for a long time. But like Todd says, you got these phases. It's great to have these sort of, as you're stepping up through the echelons of play, having different villains that you're facing, different stakes that are kind of being threatened. And I think it is a valuable thing to consider when you reach that new echelon of play. Maybe sit down and chat again and be like, okay, the last time we talked, you didn't have a base. Now you do. What kind of things are you or are you not comfortable with happening there? But I still think, I don't know. For me, it's kind of like, I don't know. I really love in Dragon Age Inquisition, spoilers, there's a moment, sort of the end of the first act when the place that you think of as your home base gets completely destroyed. But it becomes a way for all of the investment you've put into this place that you sort of, you see these different people in these different locations that you have visited every time you go back there. And suddenly they become relevant to the story and what you are doing. And that to me is really satisfying. And the most obvious examples are like if your cleric has put, some kind of a permanent ritual spell on this place, or if the wizard has put a teleportation circle, you can pull those things into it, and attacking that base makes those things relevant. But those are big examples. I still think it's valuable for it to be like you watch the bard's grand piano burn. Like that is still a nice little story moment.
One of my favorite examples of this, and it's funny that you bring up Dragon Age Inquisition, because my favorite is the Normandy in Mass Effect.
Normandy is a good example, yeah.
When I think of the Ebon Hawk, that was the first time I got a sense of like, this is my ship. Like I can wander around this thing. I can, this feels cozy and I can really role play within this ship. But being a game that came out in like 2001 or something, there wasn't much to actually do in the Ebon Hawk. And then the Normandy comes along, and particularly Normandy Mark II from Mass Effect 2 and 3 feels like there's a lot more to do in it, not just wandering around and talking to the NPCs, but going and upgrading your equipment and going and upgrading the ship and going and checking where your allies are at in Mass Effect 3. Felt like you had a sense of safety and ownership. But what's interesting about both that and Dragon Age being BioWare games is I think they did it twice and we never noticed, was they wreck the Normandy at the start of Mass Effect 2, and it's kind of like the destruction of that safe space and raising the stakes on the campaign, going like, oh, you thought this was a safe space? You thought you defeated your enemy? You think you understand your enemy? You do not. And they are going to come and wreck shop. And now, what are you going to do about it? And in the end, you get an even better ship. So you feel like the story's progressing forward and you're not getting punished for it. And I think the same in Dragon Age. You get a better castle, arguably, after the first castle gets destroyed, or the first town.
I had a great Star Wars campaign where they had built up their ship, and it was basically like a YT freighter and all that stuff. There was a villain there was no way they were going to defeat, so they had just crashed the ship on the Sith Lord. That's how they beat him. Not intentional. Like I didn't know what they were going to do, but they crashed, and so they destroyed the ship, and the ship was forever haunted after that. So they didn't bother reconstructing it, and then they stole like the Emperor's Lambda class shuttle, which I did not see coming because I'm not smart. I just had them have to steal something from the shuttle, and then they decided to steal the whole shuttle itself. And that became their big new home base. And they called it something nasty having to do with the Emperor. And that was their new pirate ship. And yeah, I think it's great for opportunities like that. It is interesting that Mass Effect starts off with death and the ship just getting wrecked. It is a very Thanos snapping Loki's neck kind of moment.
Oh.
To like reset your fear factor of what could happen in the campaign, I guess.
And I think a lot of it does come down to what sort of campaign are you running. If you are running a Grim Hollow campaign, a home base is going to mean something different than running an Aurora campaign, which is going to be something different than running a Ethereal Expanse campaign. If you have a pirate ship, you are sailing that bad boy into trouble, so you can expect it to be damaged.
Yeah.
If you are in Aurora, you need to defend that home space because it is all you have and it is what you are trying to build. If you're in Grim Hollow, you're not going to have anything happen if you just stay in your home base because all the danger is out there somewhere else. So you sort of need to explore. You need to hunt monsters, not wait for monsters to come to you. So all three are going to have a different take and a different mechanic then with how you should be using home bases or ships or those sorts of things that are places where your character need to build up and then use as part of their story.
Well, I want to drill down on like the different styles a little bit, because I was thinking, you say pirate ship, you're going to be like, driving that or sailing it into danger. And I think you're absolutely very right there. And what I love about that as a bastion, so to speak, I'm using the little b, not capital B, but you can use the capital B rules if you want to, is that it...
What? Sorry, I was looking at chat.
I just saw that too.
For those folks watching at home, chat says, Elon Musk sticks. In chat says, my home base is in Todd's arms.
Okay, great.
Well, I know my wife is at work.
I feel like pirate ships, spaceships, if you're playing Star Wars, or just mobile bastions in general, in that sense, have great capacity for storytelling. Kind of thinking about the endangering the bastion in a little bit more of a dynamic way than like the big bad going, I'm going to get their bastion. Because I loved the story you told a moment ago, Todd, of like they crashed their ship, then they stole like a Lambda, and that became their kind of new bastion. Because then, and it's very similar, like, One Piece, I think the ship they have at the start of that series gets wrecked, and then they get a new one. The Normandy gets wrecked, and then they get like a bigger, newer Normandy.
But in Blake 7, the death of Zen, when the Liberator explodes.
There you go.
In like Master Commander, the novel series, and even the show, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger ships as his career increases, which I don't know why I'm obsessed with that show. I just love seeing him do better and get like Horatio Hornblower is a terrible name for a book. I mean, a character, but but there's something cool. Like, you get upgraded. You're like, every season, like you get a bigger ship and you have a bigger, there's something you can do there with Bastions as well.
For sure. Yeah, or even just like the narrative of why this ship is different.
Yeah.
The agency to be able to choose in this dire moment, we think the stakes are high enough that we will endanger our safe space. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask one more question on this before we move on, which is the idea of an adventure where the big bad comes, but their goal isn't to destroy your bastion. Let's say it's a castle, to capture it while you're away or something, which results in an adventure where you have to come back and recapture it off of the villain, whether through siege, grand warfare, or like, secrecy and infiltration, because your bastion better than anybody else. Do we think there's story possibilities there?
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
Creeping into Tintagel, like...
Yeah, it's Saruman being a real jerk and focusing up on Hobbiton for no good reason as a place of operation. And then you're like, okay, how do we unindustrialize the Shire in the wake of Saruman, who is so petty, who basically was, on the power level of an angel, decided to go mess with the Shire because he doesn't like hobbits now. I think that's great. I had one of my first adventures with my wife. She plays Whittle, this gnome. And there was a mechanized gnome city that she used to be the queen of and decided not to be queen of it anymore, but goblins had infested it and were using it for evil purposes, kind of in a very Mortal Engines kind of way, hunting other mobile cities. So I think that it's always a great hook. Sometimes you can't come home again. That pulls on the heartstrings too. Like, what happens when your home is the dungeon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the value as well, is that it chops and changes the expected pattern of adventuring. Go out somewhere, do this, then come back. If you have to, whether it be defending your home base, in my brain, I'm just comparing this so much to video games all the time. I'm like, XCOM, when in Enemy Within, they come and they do it. Like whether you are defending it, that suddenly drastically changes what you expect from how this game and its mechanics work. Like you're in the sort of rhythm of it, and then it shifts it a little bit. If you are having to sneak back into your own base, but you know more about it than the enemies do, but you don't know what they've done with it, and you're seeing all the changes, that changes it a little bit. Like all these things just play into a kind of a delightful shift in expectation. There's this thing in genre theory that talks about how we like things to adhere to genre, but also shift them a little bit. Right? It's like watching a sports game. You know what to expect in a game of soccer, But what actually happens, what you get delight from, the place that you derive your delight is from the things that happen that are unique to this particular game. And I think that really offers a simple and straightforward opportunity to give that to your players if they are interested in it.
Plus, make them make their own map of their home base and then use it against them. Like that, if they put up a bunch of catapults and trebuchets and traps, and then they have to face that. It's so evil.
Yeah, exactly. But also leave, if they have a staff, if they have people who are leave them there, and so they're still working the castle, and you can use this sort of spy, infiltrate via information and tell your Castilian to lower the drawbridge at this time and we'll sneak in. So really let all the pieces of it work both for and against the characters. So you get all the intrigue and all the, as Dael said, all the expectation gets twisted around in different ways.
The villain sets up their own traps inside the bastion, so they think they know what they're getting into, but then you make rolls for the villain. How clever is the villain? How many secret passages do they discover? How many of the hirelings can they intimidate into kind of betraying the party, and don't make that instantly obvious? I also think mapping out the bastion is great for mobile bastions like sailing ships and stuff, for when you run like boarding actions and things. The party can, maybe when they get attacked and boarded, they can choose to retreat into parts of the boat where they're like, we'll pretend like we're running away, but when the enemy pirates all come piling in, there's some sort of trap or something waiting for them. Could be lots of fun. Speaking of fun, we're not allowed to have any in a dark fantasy campaign. Those are the rules, because everybody has to be sad. That's the question that comes from Open World Addicts email, who emailed and asked about transferring pre-written adventures into specifically, but I think there's generalized advice we can give as well, dark fantasy worlds. How do you transfer Lost Mines of Phandelver, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, Dragons of Icespire Peak, or Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, or any pre-written adventure in theory, into worlds like Grim Hollow or Drakkenheim, or even, I don't know, Ravenloft or something like that? How do you darken pre-written high fantasy adventures?
Right, just add an element of some dark thing that completely affected the entire world. Like it's just turning a knob, really. I can turn Witchlight. I can turn in almost anything dark, by like some horrible infection is affecting everyone, or some psychic influence of a spell jamming ship that is buried underneath the ground. If you want to steal,
or the player's home base was destroyed.
Oh God! Don't ever do that. Wasn't the original Lost Mines of Phandelver a little bit dark?
Because dark. Certainly, the expanded one is much darker and has that creepy psychic influence from Eldritch horrors and stuff like that. So it gets pretty dark. So it's easy. It's a good example. Like, look at that starter kit and look at Phandelver and below, and you can see how you can turn something very sweet into something horrifyingly dark.
I don't think the original was sweet though. I think it was when you first arrived.
My memory is not fantastic on this particular. I didn't feel like it was initially very dark. So
yeah. Well, it wasn't like you go to town and everything's happy. The mayor is kind of a con man. The Red Brand brigands are sort of running the town.
I guess it comes down to definition. Yeah. Like if you watch the movie Willow, is that dark fantasy or is it just slightly grim high fantasy?
Something that I like, my wife will watch something with me, and when something bad happens, she'll turn to me and be like, dark fantasy, right? Like you like, and I'm like, conflict is not inherently like dark fantasy. Conflict is in every story in some capacity, right? To me, what makes it dark is when the conflict becomes grey and muddied. And my problem, like I can speak to Lost Mines of Phandelver specifically. I haven't read the Shattered Obelisk, so I'm not sure how it changes it specifically. But when I read Lost Mines of Phandelver, I changed two specific things that in my mind made it a lot darker. The first was I got rid of the spider. Because as you read it, and this was just my reading, but he's like, I'm the spider. I'm so evil. I'm going to do evil things. And it's like, okay, so this is Skeletor. This is a cartoon villain. So I changed it into someone who had
watched the
escaped.
live action Masters of the Universe the other day. Skeletor's scary to me now. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
fair enough. I changed it so that he was someone who had escaped hell, and the reason he was doing necromantic things in the Lost Mines is because he was trying to gather his own strength because he knew demons were coming to drag him back to hell. So the idea was that he had a justification for what he was doing. The second thing I changed was the Red Brand Ruffians. I changed them from ruffians to the Order of the Red Brand, who believed they were an order of knights who were protecting the town from the villainous actions of the spider or whoever, whatever I named them. And so it changed the Red Brands from this cartoonish sort of like, we're brigands and we're tough and we don't like people, into like a secret police, if you will, who were like enforcing their will upon the town, and that the glass staff was like a secret agent, like a James Bond type figure who had been inserted by the Emperor into the village to try and protect it, but had come to the conclusion that the only way to protect the village was get it to protect itself by empowering all the strong but morally dubious people in the village. So it was just a matter of like, if you've got black paint and white paint, just, wishing your brush to get them to go grey into each other.
So it seems like part of it for you, based on those two examples, great sample size, is that sort of sincerity in motive, like evil,
yes,
but with something behind it that is like,
yes, but making it difficult for the party to find the morally justified thing to do. In the original adventure, the morally justified thing to do is to go kill a bunch of Red Brand ruffians, right? Because they're thugs. In the version that I had rewritten it as, the party actually had a very tense personal relationship with one of the leaders of the Red Brands, who became friends with the cleric in the party because they worshipped similar ideals of like justice, but their approach to it was different. The party ended up betraying the Red Brands, and it created this high drama moment where they had to fight against people they were previously allied against. And so it created the darkness came not just from the story, but from the players themselves needing to go like, did we do the right thing? Is the town going to be safer because of what we've done? If the answer, if the answer is yes, then we were justified in what we did. The terrible deeds in the face of justifiable actions. And if you don't think that justifiable actions ever justify terrible deeds, like that, no, they're terrible people, they did terrible things, that's a valid answer as well. It's just a matter of like putting the party in a place where they have to make that decision. Does that make sense?
I was thinking of Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and it'd be horrifying if it wasn't gold, it was soul coins. But even better, there is something in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons that is a coin that is infected. It looks like a gold coin, but in fact, it's a monstrous insect. And there's swarms of these. And what if when you open the treasury for Dragon Heist, those things swarm out into Waterdeep and attack the city? Like you can make the coins like maybe they're filled with the souls of children, and they're not supposed to be function that way as soul coins. Like you can really turn dials on this stuff. Or the fact that you went after this gold, you made it so much darker because you did find it. And then you have to save the city. So I think there's a lot of little knobs. It doesn't take much to make something dark.
My favorite thing in Dragon Heist is the Castellantas, the story of the Castellantas.
Oh, yeah.
If they succeed, you get this like whole extra bit where it's like, and here's the bit where you have to stop them from killing 100 civilians in order to... And also they've got, one of their children who's turned into a demon and locked in the attic. Like it gets so dark if you actually delve into them as villains. When I was working on my little rewrite of Dragon Heist, I was like, I want to focus on that. Let's pull that up on the big screen for a minute.
A lot of that's how you as the dungeon master are telling that story, or the game master, because like what you just said, the D&D movie is a dark plot line, full of death and regret, and then almost the complete destruction of a city. But somehow it's a good romp. It's a good time. Like it didn't have to feel that way.
Which brings us back to Shawn's thing about Fandelver.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Shawn, about Aurora specifically, because that's a setting that not just recontextualizing tone or theme, but I think recontextualizing adventures into settings as well is something that, is a lot of fun to do, useful for GMs to know how to approach that. What kind of approaches would you take if you were going to reset one of these adventures into something like Aurora?
I think what you need to do is do the trick of what 3 things is this setting about? And then when you get that list, you look at the adventure and you say, do any of these motifs in this adventure match what your motif of the setting is? If they match, then you're golden. You can just move in that direction. And then if you need to twist it, you sort of do what Todd said. It turn that dial and find whatever that dial is and turn it. The dial in Aurora is civilization's been destroyed. So I had a question on a different podcast about using dragon delves in Aurora. Would that work? And sadly, the answer is no, because in dragon delves, it's, you're in town, you go off and you do things with dragons and then you go back to town. In Aurora, there's no town. You have to build the town. So you would have to do a lot of work to take at least the dragon delves that I've seen so far and make them work in Aurora despite the dragon connection. But if you made every dragon delve into the dragon has gone mad, or the people that serve the dragon have gone mad because the dragon is instructing them to do these mad things, then you can make it work. But you're going to have to turn that knob all the way around to get to the right tone for that sort of that genre of survival, rebuilding, and then moving forward toward a larger goal.
Well, speaking of turning knobs all the way around, if you were listening to this podcast on an old-timey radio, it's time to turn this knob all the way around to off, because this is the end of the episode.
I'm turning the knob around.
If you're on YouTube and still listening, Todd, where can folks find you if they want to keep up with what you're up to?
I'm Todd Kenreck. I am the former host and video strategist for D&D. I have my own YouTube channel. I have a Patreon, which is how I'm paying for the gear and flying to expensive places like Gen Con in Los Angeles. So I'm also creating my own playtest materials, things that I'm obsessed with, like vampires and werewolves and shields for some reason. So I am trying to make game design choices and giving that away as PDFs on my Patreon, but also just focusing on doing interview content like this and going around and talking about different game systems and still talking to the D&D design team. Those folks are still my friends. So every little bit helps, but I also know don't spend money you don't have. But if you want to subscribe to the Patreon, that's huge. If not, that is also huge. You gotta take care of you. So and you can, it's just Todd Kenreck everywhere I go. Every time I tried to come up with a witty name for a channel, I failed, or I realized it could get sold or copyrighted, so I just made sure things were my name. So it made it way easier.
That's wise.
And by the way, thank you so much for having me on the show. That was lovely. I was excited to be on the show. I actually watch the show all the time. So I watched the show about me, and that was surreal. That was a weird moment. Yeah.
Well, we were excited to have you on, so thank you very much for giving your time. And if you want to give your time next week, we will be back, as in audience listening, we will be back next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific on a Monday. It is 9 a.m. Tuesday if you're in Australia on the Eastern Coast. And we're also on YouTube and, Spotify, all the places. Likes, thumbs, stars, stuff. They empower us to be able to make more episodes of the Eldritch Lorecast, which will be back next week. I've been Ben Byrne here with Shawn and Dael Kingsmill, Todd Kenreck, and we will catch you next week for another episode of the Eldritch Lorecast.
That's how we summon Dante.
That's what the Eldritch is, yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Now I can take you off this tiny little screen.
Yay! So much more room.
Oh my god. That's a really good discussion.
Yeah.